For years, the story out of South Korea has been, well, a demographic freefall, a plunging birth rate that has absolutely stumped policymakers and worried economists. But then, 2024 delivered a number that nobody saw coming. So let's break down this really surprising turn of events.
I mean, we're talking about a country facing a genuine population crisis with the lowest birth rate in the developed world. So when the numbers suddenly reverse course like this, it raises a huge question. What is going on? Is this a real turnaround, or is it just, a temporary illusion? Okay, so the whole story really starts with this one number. In 2024, a little over 238,000 babies were born in South Korea. Now, on its own, that's just a statistic, but when you put it into context, it becomes something way more significant. That's because it represents an increase of 8,300 babies from the year before. And that, right there, is the real headline. It's the first time the number of births has actually gone up in a single year since all the way back in 2015. After almost a decade of decline, we suddenly have a plus sign. So, this brings us to what feels like a major reversal of a very stubborn and honestly, a very worrying trend. Let's dig into what this actually means for the fertility rate.
The fertility rate, that's basically the average number of children a woman is expected to have in her lifetime. In 2023, it hit a record low of 0.72, but in 2024, it ticked up to 0.75. Now, that might seem like a small change, but in the world of demographics, believe me, any move away from zero is huge news. But this is where the story gets complicated.
You see, as soon as this data came out, demographers and researchers all over started pumping the brakes. They're basically asking if this good news is really as good as it seems on the surface. And this is the key question they're all wrestling with. Is this little uptick the result of fundamental, long-term changes in society, changes that will actually lead to more births in the future? Or is it something else entirely?
Experts like Choi Yoon-kyung are urging everyone to be cautious. She points out that 1 year of data, that's not a trend. To know if this is a real shift, we need to wait and see if this pattern holds for the next few years. So the crucial point is, we just can't declare victory yet.
So if it's not some deep structural change, then what on earth caused this baby bump? Well, Statistics Korea has actually pointed to a few key temporary factors that likely drove this increase.
All right, here's the breakdown. First, a lot of couples who put off getting married during the COVID-19 pandemic finally tied the knot, and that led to a kind of temporary marriage boom. Second, a demographic bubble meant there was simply a larger group of people entering their early 30s, which is a prime age for starting families. And finally, there was a small but notable increase in young people saying they actually hope to have kids.
And right there, that's the catch. None of these factors are permanent. The post-pandemic marriage rush is going to fade, and that demographic bubble of people in their early 30s will get older. It all suggests this bump is probably a short-lived blip.
Which brings us right back to the much bigger underlying issue. Why is South Korea even in this position? Why does it have the lowest fertility rate in the entire developed world?
And let's just put this into perspective for a second. Among all the developed nations in the OECD, South Korea is the only one with a fertility rate below 1.0. It's not just low, it's a massive global outlier, sitting way, way below the average of around 1.6.
And look, this isn't just some abstract problem on a chart. It has severe, real-world consequences for Asia's fourth largest economy. We're talking about major labor shortages down the road, a much heavier burden on social safety nets like pensions, and a real threat to economic growth.
Now, the government has been trying to fix this for years, pouring tons of money into support programs, but these efforts are just running up against a wall of reality for young people. They're facing incredibly expensive housing, sky-high education costs, a feeling that it's really hard to get ahead, and a culture where the burden of childcare still falls heavily on women. These are the deep structural problems that a one-year bump just doesn't solve.
So, where does all this leave us? What does the future hold once these temporary factors fade away?
Well, the official forecast suggests the rate might stay up for another year or so, but after that, it's really anyone's guess. Once all those post-pandemic effects even out, a lot of people are afraid the rate will just go right back to its downward slide.
Which, of course, brings us to the final, critical question. If a temporary bump isn't the answer, and billions in government spending aren't enough, what is the real solution to this incredibly deep-seated crisis? And maybe the answer lies in this really powerful insight from Choi Yoon-kyung. She argues that the focus shouldn't just be on statistics, but on people. You see, there are still many young couples who want to have families. The ultimate solution, she suggests, isn't just about financial incentives. It's about creating a society where young people can actually achieve their hopes for the future. And that's a challenge that goes far beyond a single year of data.